Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Tomanova, and the Ukraine Media Center Ukrenergo starts this operation today. It's year 9 of the war, and it's day 358 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And availing myself of opportunity, I want to greet the military journalists with the Day of Military Journalist in Ukraine, and I want to thank you for doing everything possible to make sure everybody all around the world knows about our heroic resistance. And I want to introduce our guest today. It's Volodymyr Kudrytskyi, the chairman of the management board of Ukrenergo, and we will be talking about the condition of our power grid today. Good morning, Mr. Volodymyr. Good morning, everybody. I think everybody noticed within the last couple of days we almost had no power shutdowns, and we did not observe any deficit in generating capacity in power grid. And as the operator, we did not impose the restrictions on the regions. In some regions, such as Kyiv region and Odessa region, there was a minor restrictions of consumption related to the residual damage on the network, and some capacities just are not able to cover fully the transfer of the power to the consumer. But generally we can say that the situation in the power grid was stabilized within the last couple of days, and it improved significantly. And I would like today to give a couple of comments on the reasons why it happened so, and about the forecasts. I would like to notice first of all that the main factor that led to improvement of situation was the coordinated work of all the specialists of the power industry, and us in Ukrenergo. We're trying to catch up. We repair the mainway networks. We help our colleagues to perform repair works in their facilities, and the synergetic effect of such repair of the mainway substations and regional substations resulted in our ability to get additional generating capacities reconnected to the power grid. We were able to reconnect the power supply from the thermal power plants, hydraulic power plants, and nuclear power plants, and to increase the volume of power for our consumers. Also, there was a positive influence by the external factors. The temperatures got above zero. We see a little bit of warming. We can see it in our thermometers, which means that the consumption reduced, and we were able to cover the needs of the consumers with the internal generating capacity. And starting from January, we also used import of electric power from the European countries to support our power grid. It was another factor which helped balance the situation in the power grid or to compensate the deficits. So what happened is not an arbitrary thing. It's not a coincidence. It was the result of very fruitful and meticulous work done by the power technicians to resume normal operation of the damaged installations of the damaged facilities of our power grid. We were able to improve the situation, but it's still far from being perfect and absolutely stable. We understand that there are risks of additional future missile strikes, and you know that this night the enemy attacked Ukraine with loitering drones and cruise missiles, and we understand that such attacks may continue. So it's too early to relax. Our victory in the energy front is not final, but at the same time we can say that since the winter is almost over, in a month or so we will start talking about wrapping up of the heating season, and time is on the side of Ukrainian power grid. And we expect that, provided there is no massive significant damage on the power grid, if we would be able to avoid some destruction of our power generating or transportation capacities, we will take all reasonable efforts to improve the situation. And this improvement would be in eliminating the bottlenecks which result in network restrictions in Odessa and Odessa region, and which may potentially emerge in other regions. And our colleagues will obviously keep working on the repairs of the damaged power blocks on the generating stations to create the security buffer for the Ukrainian power grid. In fact, currently Ukraine is able to cover its consumption with its own resources, which resulted in reduction of import of electric power from European power grid. That's natural because European power is more expensive than Ukrainian, and when Ukrainian power is sufficient, that usually results in the reduction of need for import. But in case the temperatures get lower and consumption respectively grows, or there are other factors that would influence the power grid in a way that Ukrainian power grid would not be sufficient to cover the needs of the consumers, we will resort to the import, and we will have this card in our sleeve. It will be always available to us in case of necessity. We continue to work on renewal of all the damaged facilities. We accumulate in equipment and resources to repair our facilities, and it's also very important to understand that in this campaign against power grid, we keep standing thanks to our good training. And now we start thinking about our next heating season, how we will live through it. And already now we start preparing ourselves, we start planning the next for the next winter. And for that we need to have material and human resources in sufficient amounts to make sure that the next heating season would not be difficult for us, and we hope in fact it will be easier. So do we understand it correctly that currently there are no limits or restrictions for the regions, and there are no plans to impose any such limits? No, there are no limits for the time being, and tonight's attack will not change our plans to spend this day without restrictions. I mean, this tonight's attack that just happened this previous night, we may only have resort restrictions due to the bottlenecks, the incapacity of the network to transport the necessary amount of electric power. But from the general point of view, there is no deficit in the grid. Yesterday, the Kyiv municipal administration reported that they would reestablish the operation of electric transport in Kyiv. Yes, the relaunch of the electric transport in the big cities is another confirmation that the situation is being stabilized. It's a good sign. I can't help but asking about Odessa. For what we understand, the last month was extremely difficult for Odessa in terms of power shutdowns. So how is the situation over there? How were we able to resume normal operation of the power grid there. Well, the works are still underway. I don't want to give any deep details about current situation with the power supply in Odessa, just not to provide any excessive information to the enemy. But it's obvious that the situation in the city, comparing to the moment after the last emergency, it's way better. It's absolutely better. There are certain restrictions which are related to the incapacity of the network to transport sufficient amount of power to cover the needs of all the consumers in Odessa and the regions. So we keep working on this in the same way that we do in other regions where we have similar problems with the transportation of electric power. So I expect that within the next couple of weeks, provided there are no massive damage on our power grid facilities, we will be able to eliminate all the bottlenecks in the power grid. Dear colleagues, if you have questions on the floor, please. Good morning, Yana Koloda, Ukrenergo. My question is, can you comment yesterday's statement by Dmitry Kharchuk that electric power deficit may be back in Ukraine? Thank you. I think, as I just said, that it's too early to relax. I mean that provided there are any unsatisfactory conditions such as damage of the mainway grid or massive enemy strikes, such situations may arise and the situation may change. But for the time being, talking about some specific factors to make situation worse, I cannot say that there are any. There are potential risks. However, for the time being, the situation is under control, and we just need to stand until the very end of the heating season. And as soon as it's over and the temperature is higher, the consumption of electric power will fall and we will be able to cover it with our own resources. So everybody should keep in mind that type of risk and just be prepared for even pessimistic scenarios.
24. A few weeks ago, or maybe it was at the end of last year, Ukraine was raising the alarm that it was running out of the necessary spare parts to continue repairing the electricity infrastructure in the way you've been doing, and asking for foreign allies to supply the necessary parts. Do I understand it that you received enough of what you need, and if you've managed to achieve the astonishing results that you've had the last few days, it's because that problem has been solved, as it were?
Мені відповідати?
Якщо можна українською на трансляції.
Окей. Отже, проблема ще до кінця не вирішена. І ми все ще потребуємо.
The problems are not yet solved in full, and we still keep the support from our partners in terms of supplies of the new spare parts, and we will need them for the months to come. This problem cannot be solved in just a couple of weeks. I think that the results that we were able to achieve within the last couple of days are the consequences of accumulation of positive factors. For example, our technicians were able to complete the plant repairs and maintenance, and the environment was favorable to us. However, the supplies of the spare parts from the West are underway, and we are in constant search of a new pieces of equipment that we may import to Ukraine and reinstall in place of the damaged equipment. And this year this process will continue, and it will not end within the it will not end soon, and I want to avail myself of opportunity to thank all of our partners, including our French partners who help us a lot. Mr. Volodymyr, we've heard a lot of times that after we proceed to repairs, we don't talk about the repairs, but that we will build the new power grid. Is it happening already, or where there are repair works, they are not only like a tactical steps, but we build some completely new, completely modernized power grid. Those are parallel processes, and for what you understand, if there is a big scale damage on a facility, we cannot wait for another facility to be built nearby. It may take months or even years, so we do everything in parallel. We resume the operation of our mainway network, we repair the equipment, and at the same time we design and implement new technical solutions that would allow us to better protect the facilities from the missile strikes. I cannot give you a lot of details about this new format of power stations and substations, because this information should be limited. The dissemination of such information should be limited to a certain extent, but we don't wait for the new facilities to be built. We repair what we have for our consumers, but at the same time we build our power grid for the future. Thank you for your question. We have a for this conversation, we have a question online. Can you comment the reduction of import? It's 20 times smaller today than previously. It's a result of increase of a generating capacity inside Ukraine. Ukrainian power is cheaper than European, and Ukrainian consumers have stimulus to refuse the import when the internal resources are sufficient. It's natural, but it's good that the option for import is always option to us, and it's a security factor that we can use just in case. Thank you for this information. Dear colleagues, I'm reminding you, joining us was Volodymyr Kudrytskyi, the chairman of the board of Ukrenergo. Our next briefing is at 17:15. Joining us will be Irina Vereshchuk, Vice Prime Minister, Minister for the Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories of Ukraine. And there will be a presentation of the project of a new state policy strategy on internal displacement until 2025. So bear with us, trust in our armed forces, and work together for our victory. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Thank you.